Hey there, roadies! It's been so long. It's been a really long time since we did our last video. Welcome back to Cooking Across Cultures on the Road. I am Tyra.
I'm Rachida.
And for those of you who are new, we started this vlog basically to highlight the different cultural restaurants that exist in Sioux Falls, where we live and where we work and go to school. So today we have food from Auntie J's American Soul Food, and I am so super excited. I've been wanting to try this for the longest. We have Caribbean jerk meatballs, macaroni, collard greens, green beans, and honey cornbread, I believe. And then also this tropical fruit and rhubarb lemonade. All things that I have never tried before, I don't think, for the most part. And so super excited to dig in. Rachida, how you feeling?
I'm really excited. I've never had soul food ever, except for when we went to New Orleans.
Yeah.
So that's the only like southern cuisine I've ever tried. So I'm really excited to try it, especially mac and cheese. I'm not the biggest fan of cheese, like at all. So I'm excited, but I'm excited to try it out of everything else because I think it'll give me a taste of something that I've never had.
Yeah, so let's dig in.
What are you gonna taste first?
I think the collard greens. That's the first thing my fork went to, so.
What's it given?
It's good.
Is that actually corn in there?
I don't think so. Some people do make cornbread and they put corn in it, but do you want to taste some of the collard greens?
Yeah. Oh,
This is really good.
that's very flavorful.
So Auntie J's is in Lenox, South Dakota, which is about 20 minutes from where we live. But today we caught up with her at the wine festival. I have to look up the exact place where we met her, but there was a lot going on there. Inflatables, a lot of people.
They had live music.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was.
And the weather was really great to have a festival like that today, so it was really nice.
At the Wild Prairie Winery Harvest Festival is where her food truck was at today. Oh, that's bomb.
What?
That's good. The meatballs. Oh, period, Auntie J's.
You like it?
I love it.
Good.
Let me try this lemonade. Tropical fruit and rhubarb. Apparently, rhubarb is really popular around these parts. I have never heard of rhubarb. I have no idea. Wait, let me look it up. A fleshy, edible stalks of species and hybrids of rheum in the family Polygon. Yeah, I don't know how to pronounce that. Which are cooked and used for food. The plant is herbaceous. That's not telling me what it is.
Wait, this is really delicious. I actually really like it.
Yeah, she put her foot in all of this.
Put in it.
For those of you who have never heard that saying, because I didn't realize that it was not a popular saying until I said it in front of some of my classmates once, and they were like, she literally put her foot in it? Like, no. Like, that just means that it's really good. Like, she gave it her all. That's what that means.
But you do throw a lot of like slang in your conversations, and it's always really funny to hear.
It's funny to me because, like, these are things that we say all the time, like, I guess in Black culture. Mm-hmm. But coming here, I didn't realize how much I said that type of stuff until my students or other people would be like, what does that mean? Or they would give me like this weird look. So for those of you who don't know, I'm originally from Tennessee. I moved to Sioux Falls in June of 2022 to work at Augustana. And so it's been a culture shock for me coming to the Midwest because I have lived in the South pretty much my whole life. Well, actually for my whole life. And I don't know, I guess I just never realized how different other parts of the U.S. could and would be until actually moving to Sioux Falls. And so I don't know, that's something that comes up a lot, is just how different the culture is in comparison to the South.
Is there anything that you hear me say as someone who's grown up in the Midwest that you're like, well, just yesterday, Tyra and I were having a conversation, and she said something, and I was like, yeah? And Tyra was like, yeah?
Yes.
And I guess that is something, I don't know if they say it in the South and North, wherever, but like yeah means really. So you know, like when you say yeah with like, and you add a question mark at the end, so it's just like yeah. And then, but I've actually been to like spoken to people from like not from the United States, and every time I say yeah, they're like
yeah.
But I mean yeah as in like really, or like no is also the same thing. It'll be like no question mark, but it means really. So,
like, and I guess not that this is a Southern thing, but I've heard people say you know at the end of a sentence, like something you know, and so I guess yeah and no is like y'all's you know, but I don't think there's anything that off the top of my head that y'all say that is different. I think something that I caught on to is how people say bag, like grocery bag, they say bag, like, and I just thought that was so interesting because I was just like, I don't know, I guess coming to the Midwest, I didn't really notice like a huge like accent from anybody. But when people say bag, when they're trying to say like grocery bag or book bag and they say bag, that's the only thing that stuck out to me.
Yeah.
Other than that, I think coming here and then going back home, I definitely noticed my Southern accent more.
Yeah.
And it's funny now because I feel like I talk even more Southern than what I did probably before I came here. And I don't know if it's like a rebellious thing or what it is.
Trying to hold on to your Southern accent. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's funny. I went home this summer for my high school reunion. And I could hear so thick, like people who I've known like my whole life, they would say something. I'm just like, dang, your country. And it's just like, and not in a bad way, but it's just like when you live in a place to where like people don't really technically have an accent, I think you can pick up on other people's accents like even more. Speaking of summer, somebody went to Oman.
Yeah, this summer I had the opportunity to go to Oman with the Critical Language Scholarship Program. And so the objective of the summer of the program was to learn English, to learn Arabic, and to get some cultural insight into like the Gulf culture, traditions, customs, and everything. And so I spent 8 weeks there with some 20 some other students from the US, from all over. I was the only person from South Dakota, so I was kind of proud of that. But we had another student from Iowa, so me and her were kind of like close because we shared the same traditions or like, you know, homegrown stuff. But yeah, it was a very fun summer. Very challenging summer because Arabic is the hardest language. So there was definitely times where I was like, why did I make this decision? But for the most part, I think at the end, because hindsight is 2020, you really get to look back and you're like, oh, this actually meant something more than it did in the present. So then now when I think about the summer, I actually can think about it in a way that is rewarding, and I can speak Arabic now. I'm not fluent, but I'm like intermediate level, so I can talk with my dad and my mom who both speak Arabic. So I'm really excited to continue my fluency so then I can grow that relationship with my mom and my dad, because I talk about this with like a lot of the international students at Augie, but there's some part of your personality that kind of like goes away when you have to speak in your second, third, or fourth language. And so I felt this a lot when I was in Oman too. The person who I am in English and the person who I am in Arabic are two different people.
Wow.
100, because with your limited vocabulary, plus the way the language is structured, it kind of forces you to mean things that you don't necessarily say. So Arabic is more of a direct language because they don't have to be verb. So there is no I am, you are, they are. It's just like I go, but you know how English is like I go to the store. In Arabic it's just I go store. You know, so there is, but besides that, with my limited vocabulary in Arabic, every time I would meet somebody, they would meet a Rachida that was not my actually authentic self. So I was a lot quieter, I was a lot straight to the point. They're like, what do you study? I study government in the United States. Like I was very like straight to the point versus like if you were to ask me that in English, I would give you all the nuance in the world, you know?
Yeah, I get what you mean. Like, I guess in our language, if somebody was to ask you a question, you can get as descriptive as you want. You can explain the plays, you can explain the experiences you're having, whereas like you're saying, it's just straight to the point. Like,
Yep.
Like you probably didn't even tell them you were from South Dakota. Like it was just like
South Dakota. What?
Because honestly, and I think that's an interesting point. It's something I never would have thought about, but I even think about like when I tell people that I live in South Dakota, that automatically generates more conversation. It's like, South Dakota, how did you get there? Like, blah, blah, blah. But if you say, you know, I study government in the United States, like unless a person has interest in any part of that conversation, like what else is there to ask or to say or to follow up on, you know?
Absolutely. That actually, yeah, that sums up what happened a lot in the United States. So then they would ask me questions like, do you plan to work in government? Are you very political? You know, because government was the only context that I gave them. So then they would try to relate with me using what they knew about government in the United States, which is like, I'm actually a lot more than government in the United States. And if I wanted to get a little bit more descriptive, it would be like, okay, maybe I could tell them Chicago, because Chicago is in the Midwest. It's not really South Dakota Midwest.
I mean, it's two different places, but
it really is two different cultures entirely. But then they'd be like, oh, you're from Chicago. I'm like, around there.
Sort
8
of.
hours.
Not really.
8 hours that way. But yeah, so that was a big part. So I kind of wish that I had more knowledge of the language so I could actually develop a relationship with them. But another cool thing that the program allowed us to do was they paired us up with like host families from Oman. So like 3 times a week we got to go to their homes, and we would get to meet their families, their siblings, and we would actually get to eat dinner, like how they eat dinner. We'd eat things that they would eat. And so that was very insightful, as opposed to going to the tourist restaurants and hanging out with your American friends all the time, even though you're in a different country. So it really gave us like a broad perspective of Oman, not just as tourists, but as people who would live there.
Yeah, that is so interesting. Is there anything else, I guess, about your experience that was different? So you spent pretty much the entire summer in Oman. Like, what was the difference in your summer in Oman as opposed to if you would have been in Sioux Falls?
Well, one, I was learning a foreign language, but then also my main takeaway from Oman was how much I struggled, but in a different way. I told you this a lot. It was a great summer, but it was a summer of many challenges. I got a bacteria infection, so I had to go through all that treatment process, which made me weak. Sometimes I was very nauseous all the time. So that didn't give me a lot of space to like actually study the language and want to do anything more than go to class and go to sleep. But after 8 weeks of going through that and like struggling, crying, not wanting to deal with anything, once you complete a challenge like that, you feel invincible. Like, I literally told myself, if I've done this, like, what else can I do in the world? What other challenge can the world throw at me? Because I feel good about myself. So, again, it was a very challenging summer, but I feel like I'm a different person because of it. Because I completed something that felt so monumental at that moment. But now I'm like, great. I'm a better person. Yeah. I'm a better person. Yeah.
Rachida 2.0, if you will.
How was your summer, Tyra?
To be honest, summer just like flew by. It's like I blinked and it was just like, okay, time for the students to come back. Like, I don't really feel like I had a summer, like not like your typical summer. Obviously as an administrator, we don't get breaks. I mean, if we take a vacation, that's one thing, but as far as like work is year round for us. And so I think in my mind, I was like, well, I traveled a lot for work throughout the year. I kind of don't want to travel. I just want to chill. But then when school started back, I was like, maybe I should have taken some time to like travel. We did go to NCORE, the National Conference on Race and Ethnicity in Higher Education in New Orleans at the end of May, beginning of June, and you were there. So you know like how awesome it was. But again, I was working. I had moments where I did like kind of venture off and kind of do my own thing, but for the most part, that was work. Like, so it wasn't really vacation. And then a week after that, I did get to go home to Tennessee for my 10-year high school reunion and to visit my family. And that was amazing. Like, excuse me, I had such a great time. I don't know, I guess it's weird thinking about seeing people that you haven't seen since high school and like what that would be like, because most of my classmates I haven't seen or talked to in I don't know how long. I was just like, I don't know what I'm stepping into. It was a little nerve-wracking at points, but it actually was a really positive experience, and I'm so glad that I went. And then other than that, I didn't really do much this summer. I just planned for the semester ahead. But yeah, I guess, yeah, I didn't I didn't really do much else. But yeah, this next summer I definitely plan to get out and see the world.
Over the summer, we had a lot of social media, fun things that happen on social media that every time I would be on my phone, I would scroll. Like, the first thought that would come to mind is, what does Tyra think about this? Or like, what discussions are they having in the office? For now, I kind of want to get Tyra's input on it. To kind of go back and see, what did Tyra actually think about this? So the first one that happened was the submarine incident.
Oh my gosh. And I just want to say we are not laughing at the people at all. We are. I'm just like, I'm a nervous laugher, so I laugh at everything, but that is not a funny situation by any means.
Not at all. However, it was 5 people in that submarine, 5 very wealthy people who were seeking an adventure in the ocean, and they were hoping to get a peek at the Titanic. And along the way, horrible things happened. ... So Tyra, when you were seeing these events unfold on the internet, and they were giving us like live feed information because they had like 48 hours, I think, before they were gonna run out of oxygen, and so like every hour they were giving us like information. How did that make you feel? Like, what were your thoughts about that situation?
I will be honest and say that I get anxious very easily by things that I see on social media, like especially when there are huge events that everybody, like, no matter where you go, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, whatever, everybody's talking about it. It makes me really anxious, and so a lot of times I try to like tune that stuff out. So I think for most of it, I had no idea what was going on, because for my own personal like peace of mind, I was like, I have to tune this stuff out or else I'm gonna drive myself crazy. Yeah. But I think once it got to the point to where it was looking like they weren't gonna resurface and like they were probably gonna end up dying because the submarine was going to implode, I think I did have a couple conversations with people about it, and I feel like it was very interesting for me, because I feel like, and I hope I know how you girls like to tussle, so I hope that like this doesn't like cause any issues, but it kind of was like rich people probs. Like, nobody else in the world has enough money to get in a submarine and go see something like that. And so it's just like, not that I didn't care, but it also was just like, when you have the money to do anything you want, you tend to get in a different type of situation than somebody who doesn't have the money to spend on something like that. Yeah. That was my first thought. Secondly, I think I also was just like, you know, they tell us all the time that there are so many parts of the ocean that haven't been discovered yet. And so to think that these individuals thought that it was okay as long as they were in their submarine to go and like do something like that, it just kind of makes me think, I would love to like have been able to interview them and kind of get their thought process, because like me personally, if somebody tells me like, what is it, 80% of the ocean hadn't been discovered yet, I don't care if I was in a submarine or if Jesus himself gave me some type of like something to be, I just wouldn't do it. And so I think there were so many questions that I had in general in regards to that situation.
Yeah, and I think 80% of the internet would agree with you on a lot of those points, because I don't know, with the internet just felt so disconnected from the reality that millions of Americans are facing right now.
Mm-hmm.
And because it was on the internet and media was giving huge attention to it, it was kind of telling us that we have to care about it. Like, this is something that is so huge. And yes, it is. The lives of any 5 to 500 is very valuable, and it is a sad thing. But at the same time, if you are a single mother struggling to keep the house afloat and you have 4 kids and you live in New York, for goodness sake, you know, like, there's so many issues that, like, if you saw that on the internet, part of you would be upset. You're like, are you kidding me? Mm-hmm. Like, all of this wealth, all of this money, and you decide to go on and yes, and now, like, you're gonna have to deal with this consequence, but it's like you're so disconnected from the reality that so many people are living with. It kind of makes it very hard to sympathize and feel any other way except for a little bit of, like, frustration.
Absolutely. And I think even more so when you hear about how much money they spent to go on that adventure, it also makes you wonder, like, why aren't there things in place where people, and I know you can't tell anybody what to do with their money. I would never want to do that, but when you literally, I remember I went to Denver in April this year, and I was downtown, and, like, their downtown area, literally for miles, just in front of, like, their stores, there were, like, tents and, like, people that were, like, super homeless. And I'm just like, here you are seeing, and even here you see people all the time on the side of the road, like, begging and, like, needing things. But it just makes you wonder, like, why aren't people who actually have the money to be able to help giving to that instead of spending it on stuff that really just doesn't matter? Like, yes, you want to go see the Titanic, but, like, what would that, even if you did get to see it, what would that, like, I don't understand it. That's why I said I would have loved to have interviewed them just to better understand, not to judge, because I don't believe in judging people, but I also just want to get to the bottom of, like, what their thought process was so that maybe I could better understand.
Yeah.
Because, like, seeing it in the news, it just wasn't, something wasn't clicking for me.
Yeah. It kind of also reminds me of the billionaire race to space. Do you remember?
Yes, and I'm glad you brought that up because I thought about that too. Yeah,
was it Jeff Bezos,
yep,
Elon Musk, and another one who's also really rich but is not as, like, socially popular as the other two? We're trying to find a way to get to space. That also was a moment where you're just like, you're so not walking with the people on Earth anymore.
At all.
And that's what money, I think that's what it just does to you, because you can't be playing ball with the kids on the street anymore. Like, what's next? And space exploration is next. And while I do think it's maybe, like, what do you think about, like, you know, like, the idea of space? Like, people are so intrigued by it. Like, they want to be building all these rockets. They want to go see if aliens are out there.
Again, if they tell you that something has not been discovered yet, why do you feel that you need to be Christopher Columbus? And that's, I ain't even gonna get into all of that. But why do you feel like you need to go out and look at stuff? Before I get into that, though, I wanted to say, I think that also, and I don't want to get political, but that also speaks to the nature of our country, because here we are talking about these people with money. 9 times out of 10, the people with money have the most power, and they're also making the decisions for everybody else in the country. And if you are so disconnected from what we have going on that you feel like it's important for you to spend all this money on this submarine ride to see this random thing, then you probably also don't know what real struggles the real people are having. And so when you are making these decisions, like, you're not making them from a space of, like, a conscious space. You're making it from, like, well, I think this is what should happen. And I think, like, there are so many things that just popped up in my mind, and I think that's why I try to stay away from, like, situations like this, because I will go down a rabbit hole of my own, and I'm just
it's
like,
a conversation to that.
I'm like, well, you might have only seen this, but this is what I'm seeing out of this situation. But yeah, I think a lot of times I have to tune it out, because even in, like, hearing that they finally said that aliens were real and things like that, like, I'm of the belief that nothing that is put out into the media or put out into, like, movies and things like that, there's always a bit of truth to them. So yes, but at the same time, it's like, I just feel like if there's nothing else that I've learned from just history in general. It's like, why go tampering with something that's not bothering you? And I think what irritates me is because in a lot of movies that we see with zombie apocalypse and things like that, it's always somebody rich or somebody in a lab or somebody messing with something they have no business messing with, and then it interferes with everybody else. And so I guess my biggest thing and what I wish more people would do is think about how their actions would affect others, as opposed to just doing something because they have the money to or because they can. And I think I talked to Willette about this one day too. There was this post that I saw on Instagram, and it might have been around the same time that the submarine thing happened, but it said scientists often ask, can we, but they never say as should we, or something like that. Basically saying just because you can doesn't mean you should. And I think that is like the biggest thing I want everybody to take from situations like this.
Yeah. So I have two things that I was thinking while you were talking. Is one, I think humanity's natural curiosity to explore the unknown is sometimes has been to our benefit, because, for example, if we didn't explore, the moon, then we wouldn't have the information that we know today.
Right.
Or DNA or scientific data, all those things have bettered life. But like you said, so many of people's wealth and resources go unchecked by like a higher authority that like a lot of the times their consequences affect everybody else and not just like their singular decision. But then I was also thinking about when you said affecting everybody else, and I was thinking about the climate crisis because that's just another thing that like all the main communities that are going to be affected by it are the communities who had nothing to do with it. So I'm thinking about like Madagascar, an island off of Africa, like that is struggling to grow crops like year round. So they're going through a horrible famine. How last year I think 1/3 of Pakistan was underwater because of flooding. What happened in Libya with the dam just broken, in Morocco and the earthquakes, like all of those climate issues are only happening to like the countries that like it's not them, polluting our earth and all of these things. So I think I really resonated when you said that, because the consequences of people's actions is most of the time it will not affect them, but it will affect everybody else.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I agree 100%.
Bueno. So what else happened this summer? I'm trying to think.
I know you said you wanted to talk about the whole Jamie Foxx thing.
Oh yeah. Okay, so what was the context of that?
I think he said something along the lines of, and maybe I should look it up so we don't misquote.
Yeah.
But they killed this dude named Jesus. What do you think they'll do to you? #fake friends, #fake love. And I think the biggest controversy of it all is who they was referring to. And a lot of people, not only did people get upset thinking that he was referring to Jewish people, but also Jennifer Aniston like released a statement trying to like absolve herself from the situation, which that in itself was funny because she said something along the lines of like, I did it accidentally, but I also did it on purpose. Trying to do something, and I'm just like, well, what? But I think my biggest issue with that situation is the cultural context of it, because I feel like kind of like what we were talking about earlier with like the sayings that I use, like there are so many things within Black culture where we just say stuff and we know what it means automatically, and I feel like there are times where like other cultures will take something that we say and either take it literally or blow it out of proportion, take it out of context. And most times it's to our detriment. Like there's this post one day that I saw that said something about being Black is knowing as much as you can about white people for your own safety, whereas being white is being all in the Kool-Aid and not knowing the flavor. And it's like, not to try to like say anything about anybody else, but I feel like, and I talk about this all the time, because we understand what it's like to not be considered and to be misunderstood, I feel like we overly try to understand other cultures. Whereas when it comes to us, people are like so dead set in their own implicit biases or whatever it is that they feel about us, that they just, whatever it is they think, it must be right. And I think that was like my biggest issue with that entire situation.
Yep. Yeah, I can understand about it. That's exactly what it was. I was also thinking about how they can also just plain take the things that you say and then claim it as a type of culture. And I was thinking about this because I saw something on the news that was like Gen Z slang, and it was like bet, and it was what are other like black culture sayings, like sis or slay or queen or all of these things that that are actually African vernacular English,
or from gay culture, or LGBTQ, which whatever, however you want to define it, but
but then now it's being referred to as Gen Z slang. And so I saw this. Do you know the Consciously? He's like a TikToker influencer, and he's just like very educated black man, and he talks about stuff like that on the internet. You might have seen him on the internet because he's popping. And so he was just responding to that, and he was just like, there has to be, and it's kind of exactly like what you said. When it benefits a different culture, they can take it. But like what Jennifer Aniston did, when it was protecting herself, she quickly pushed herself and absolved herself from the culture.
Absolutely.
Which is scary. And
it is scary. I think it also is frustrating because I feel like, and we talked about this before, I think what's frustrating about it is the fact that like we can never just be like, and I think I would love to see a study about which group of people has the most anxiety, because I bet you it is people of color, because we literally have to think about every facet of our life every day. Like, I can't say a certain thing because I'll come off this way. I can't dress a certain way because I'll come off this way. If I do this, even though they offended me or they did something to hurt my feelings, if I react, then I'll look like the person in the wrong. Like, it's like a mental Olympics. You're always like overthinking just so that you can like kind of like absolve whatever issue, what issue you make up in your mind to happen, which 9 times out of 10 is the right is the right thing. But it's just like, it's frustrating. I think that Jamie Foxx issue brought up so many things in my mind, because I even think about a couple times with like things I've read, or even like something that happened to me when I was in school. When I was in high school, I was in like a pre-calculus class or something, and I asked the teacher to help me because I was like so confused about what we were doing. As I'm asking this question, the teacher's trying to explain, and there's like 2 or 3 other students trying to explain at the same time, and I'm just like overwhelmed. So I was like, you know what, don't worry about it. Said it just like that, left it alone. My teacher was like, you know what, I won't worry about it. And she like kind of sort of went off on me in front of everybody, and I'm just kind of sitting there like, what did I say wrong? Like, and it was like this whole thing, and it reminded me that, like, again, things that we say, because I can say don't worry about it to like my mom or my grandma, and they understand that I'm just saying like I'm good, like it's all right. But for whatever reason, like that was like triggering for her because she felt like I was like coming off a certain way. I don't know, but it just makes me think about all these different circumstances. Again, I was on Instagram a couple weeks ago, and there was like this old clip of Kobe Bryant's daughter like making a video in a helicopter, and she said something, and somebody put in the comments, this didn't age well. And obviously they were talking about whatever she said in connection to, I guess, what ended up happening to her. But somebody commented back to them and was like, what do you mean she didn't age well? She's a kid. Why are you looking at her that way? And it was just like, even the person commented back and was like, what are you talking about? But again, like, that's just like one example of how like the things that we say every day in our culture can be totally misconstrued and taken in a whole different way. And instead of people asking questions, they automatically assume the worst about the situation.
Yeah. And then I think about how we can't even add context to it either, because then it's just like us defending something that, you know, now we've already lost like the social battle. So then what do we do then? You just gotta take it. I think, what did Jamie Foxx end up doing? He apologized.
I think he issued an apology, and that's what irritates me also, because yes, I will apologize for offending whoever I offended, but at the same time, that should not be a thing. And not only because
he didn't do anything wrong, but I feel like we, again, as people of color, it's particularly Black people, we always have to go out of our way to apologize. But when things happen to us, I don't feel like we get that same treatment. Like, when things happen to us and we say we're offended by something, people will be quicker to defend their actions as opposed to just saying, you know what, you're right, I'm sorry, or tell us to get over something. Like, and I think that irritates me all the time. I am, obviously, because I work in diversity and because I am so passionate about diversity, I want everybody to get their just due. I want everybody to, you know, feel like they belong, but at the same time, I can't sit up here and say, like, I don't see the differences in how we're treated in comparison to other groups of people either. So yeah, so I'm super excited to see where this goes. This season of Cooking Across Cultures on the Road is going to be really different compared to past seasons. We do still want to do like the getting in the kitchen with the chefs and kind of like learning about the culture and things like that. But we also kind of want to like dive into some other ways of like exploring the culture. And so I am excited for y'all to see what things we have in store. Thank you so much to Auntie J's for this amazing food. I will be back because this was bomb. Thank you, Auntie J's. The food was amazing. We will be back. And for those of you who are interested in trying Auntie J's, it is located in Lenox, South Dakota. However, she does have her schedule updated on streetfoodfinder.com, I believe is where it is. And you can see where her food truck is located throughout the state. Thank y'all so much for tuning in. We will see you on the next episode of Cooking Across Cultures on the Road.